Leave It to Beaver sold us perfection. Smiling kids, loving parents, a flawless suburban dream. But what if it was all a lie? Behind those spotless sets, actors were forced to hide their bodies, their pain, even their truth, all under the studio's control, all for the illusion of family television. The show became a legend. But for those who lived it, it was hell. Now, after decades of silence, 15 forbidden secrets are finally breaking through. And once you hear them, you'll never see Mayfield the same way again. Fact 1. The hidden pain behind Judy Hensler's smile. Judy Hensler was the snitch, the smug little classmate who always tattled on Beaver. But off-camera, actress Jerry Weil was living a quiet nightmare. At just 12 years old, her body began to change. She was growing up, but the producers didn't want that. They wanted the perfect little girl. So the costume department did something cruel. They wrapped her chest tightly, with tape and bandages, before every shoot, forcing her to look younger. Jerry said it hurt so much she'd cry in the dressing room. The adults told her to deal with it. She later called it the moment that broke her love for acting. What the audience saw as confidence was really humiliation. The show wanted innocence, and they forced it, literally. By the end of the series, Jerry walked away from Hollywood altogether. She became a real estate agent, saying she never wanted to be near a studio again. That's the cost of wholesome entertainment no one ever talked about. Fact 2. The death hoax that fooled America. In 1968, the United States was bleeding from the inside. Vietnam, assassinations, chaos. And then came a rumor so twisted, people actually believed it. Ward Cleaver was dead. Newspapers reported that Jerry Mathers, the beloved kid from Leave It to Beaver, had been killed in action in Vietnam. Obituaries ran. TV anchors mourned him. Even Tony Dow, who played Wally, sent flowers to Jerry's parents. But the truth was different. Jerry was alive, safe in the U.S., serving in the Air National Guard. The dead soldier was someone else, Sergeant Stephen Mathers. But by the time anyone realized, the rumor had already exploded across America. It got worse. Actress Shelley Winters even announced his death on The Tonight Show. Fans cried. Jerry later said people approached him holding newspaper clippings with his fake obituary. They said, "We thought you were dead." It became one of Hollywood's longest-running urban legends. Even decades later, people still whispered that the real Beaver died in Vietnam and was replaced by a look-alike for public appearances. Fact 3. Eddie Haskell's screen image became his fate. You know that smirking kid who always said, "Good afternoon, Mrs. Cleaver"? Yeah, Eddie Haskell, the smart mouth every parent secretly hated and every kid secretly wanted to be. But what happened to the actor behind him, Ken Osmond, was straight out of a Hollywood thriller. When the show ended, Osmond's career didn't just slow down, it flatlined. No one wanted him. Casting agents saw Eddie, not Ken. He tried to land roles, but producers laughed him out of rooms. He was too Eddie. So he vanished. And when he finally came back, it wasn't on TV, it was on the streets of Los Angeles, in a police uniform. Yeah, Eddie Haskell became a real cop, a motorcycle officer. The guy who used to fake politeness for TV now pulled over real people with a gun on his hip. And one day in 1980, that gun saved his life. During a high-speed chase, a suspect opened fire. 3 bullets hit him. 2 slammed into his bulletproof vest, and 1 bounced off his belt buckle. If that buckle had been 1 inch lower, Eddie Haskell would have died in a gutter. It was the perfect irony. But his story didn't stop there. Rumors exploded that he became Alice Cooper. Then worse, a porn star named John Holmes started using his name in X-rated films. Osmond spent 11 years in court fighting to clear his name. The world turned Eddie Haskell into a joke. Fact 4. The Hidden Faith of Ward Cleaver. Every sitcom dad tries to look wise. But Ward Cleaver, the calm, serious father everyone quoted, wasn't acting. He was preaching, literally. Hugh Beaumont, the man behind Ward, wasn't just an actor. He was a licensed Methodist minister. Before Hollywood, he studied theology and planned to spend his life behind a pulpit, not a camera. When money ran out during seminary, he took small acting jobs to survive, and those jobs changed everything. Soon he found himself torn between two callings, the ministry and the movies. But here's the twist. He never left one for the other. Even at the height of Leave It to Beaver, Beaumont would quietly preach in small churches across California. That's where Ward's calm came from. He carried the weight of his faith into every episode, teaching lessons the writers didn't even realize they were telling. Career was on the rise. Then tragedy struck. When his mother died in a car crash in 1969, while he was driving, he stopped acting entirely. He said Hollywood had taken enough from him. He spent his later years in Minnesota, quietly writing and farming, never seeking the spotlight again. Fact 5. The secret origin of Beaver. Let's be honest. You've probably wondered it your whole life. Why the hell was he called Beaver? For decades, fans guessed everything from childish nicknames to secret jokes. But the truth is surprisingly human and strangely sentimental. One of the show's creators, Joe Connolly, had served in the Merchant Marine during World War II. There, he had a shipmate everyone called Beaver. No one knew why. Maybe it was a family joke. Maybe just a quirk. But the name stuck with Connolly long after the war ended. Years later, when he was writing stories inspired by his own kids, that nickname came back to him. Theodore Cleaver didn't sound special, but Beaver Cleaver, it had rhythm. It felt innocent, mischievous, and easy to say. Jerry Mathers had no idea he was inheriting a real man's legacy, a ghost from Connolly's past. That's what made it weirdly perfect. And now, every time someone says, "Hey, Beaver," they are unknowingly echoing a war buddy lost to time. Fact 6. The $40,000 episode that changed TV forever. It sounds impossible. A family sitcom spending $40,000 on a single half-hour episode back in 1961. But Leave It to Beaver did exactly that. And it sent shockwaves through Hollywood. The episode was called In the Soup. On paper, it was simple. Beaver climbs up a billboard to look inside a giant bowl of soup and gets stuck. But the production behind it was chaos. Real sets, special rigs, wind machines, and days of shooting for what looked like an innocent gag. Producers begged for more money. NBC hesitated. They were told, "It's a show about kids. It's not Ben-Hur." But they went ahead anyway. The final cost, roughly $40,000, 3 times the price of an average American home. Critics thought it was insane. But when the episode aired, audiences couldn't look away. The realism made it feel like every kid's worst nightmare. What they didn't realize was how carefully it had been filmed. Every second had to look innocent, but underneath it was pure Hollywood innovation. Multiple camera angles, practical stunts, and weeks of planning. And here's the twist. That single gamble worked. Fact 7. The hidden scar behind June Cleaver's pearls. Those pearls weren't fashion. They were armor. Barbara Billingsley, America's perfect mom, June Cleaver, wasn't trying to look elegant for the cameras. She was trying to hide something, a surgical scar and a deep hollow in her neck that studio lights made painfully obvious. Instead of asking for help, she took matters into her own hands. She walked into wardrobe one morning, held up a string of pearls and said, "This'll fix it." And it did. Under the bright lights, the pearls caught reflections, softening shadows, covering what she didn't want the world to see. The crew loved it. The pearls became June Cleaver. Viewers adored it. What started as insecurity became an icon. Years later, when the 1980s revival The New Leave It to Beaver aired, one entire episode revolved around June losing her pearls. It was emotional because fans didn't realize it mirrored Barbara's truth, how one tiny piece of jewelry had once saved her confidence. Fact 8. The forbidden toilet scene that almost killed the show. In 1957, television was still a temple of decency. You could show gunfights, but not a bathroom. Then Leave It to Beaver did the unthinkable. It showed a toilet on screen. The episode Captain Jack was meant to launch the series, but it nearly destroyed it before it even aired. The plot was harmless. Beaver and Wally ordered a baby alligator from a comic book and tried to hide it in the toilet tank. But to censors, that wasn't funny. It was filthy. Executives called emergency meetings, demanding the entire episode be scrapped. They claimed bathroom imagery was indecent, even though nothing inappropriate happened. The producers fought back. They argued it wasn't about a toilet, it was about childhood mischief. Still, the network wouldn't budge until they reached a bizarre compromise. They could show the top of the toilet tank, but never the bowl. That's it. One wrong camera angle, and the show was banned. Fact 9. The high heels that saved the illusion. You've seen the reruns. June Cleaver vacuuming the living room in heels. Every teenager today laughs at that image. But what if I told you those heels weren't about vanity at all? They were about power. When Leave It to Beaver started, Barbara Billingsley was taller than her two on-screen sons. But as Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow hit their growth spurts, suddenly, Mom looked small, shorter than her teenage boys. Producers started noticing. One of them even joked, maybe we should start calling her Little June. That didn't sit right. Barbara had built June Cleaver into the emotional center of the show. She wasn't going to be visually diminished just because her kids grew taller. So she took control. She told wardrobe to get her new shoes, higher ones. Each season, the heels got a little taller. By the later seasons, her sons might have been 6 feet tall, but on camera, June Cleaver still looked like the one in charge. The audience never realized it, but those heels joined the pearls, and suddenly, they became part of June Cleaver legacy. Fact 10. The comedy that banned its own laughter. Here's something no one ever tells you. Leave It to Beaver was the only comedy on television that didn't want you to laugh. Yeah, you heard that right. The producers had a rule. If a joke got too big of a laugh, they cut it. Why? Because Joe Connolly and Bob Mosher, the creators, weren't chasing comedy. They were chasing honesty. They didn't want the Cleavers to feel like characters on a stage. They wanted them to feel like your neighbors. Tony Dow, who played Wally, later admitted the producers would sit in rehearsals, arms crossed, judging the audience's reaction. If the crowd laughed too loud, Connolly would stop everything and say, "Too funny. Take it out." Think about that. A comedy terrified of comedy. It sounds insane, but it worked. Instead of punchlines, Leave It to Beaver gave people moments, the awkward silences, the gentle lessons, the kind of humor that doesn't make you burst out laughing but makes you smile and say, "Yeah, I've been there." That's why it lasted. So next time you watch it and wonder why you're not cracking up, remember that wasn't an accident. Fact 11. The anti-war movement born from a lie. Every protest has a spark. For Stephen Talbot, that spark was a lie about his best friend's death. Talbot played Gilbert Bates, Beaver's mischievous school pal. In 1968, he heard the same false report that shocked America. Jerry Mathers had been killed in Vietnam. The news hit him like a truck. Talbot couldn't believe it. The kid he'd grown up with, gone. If Beaver could die in Vietnam, what did that say about the world? That moment changed him forever. He dropped out of the Hollywood orbit and joined the anti-war movement. He marched, organized rallies, wrote essays. He became one of the most passionate voices of his generation, all because of a rumor that turned out to be false. Years later, when he discovered Jerry was alive, it didn't undo what had happened. By then, his activism had become his life. He said, "It didn't matter if it was true or not. It felt true. It felt like America was killing its childhood." That's the kind of psychological punch Leave It to Beaver left behind, a show so ingrained in the country's soul that when people thought the beaver died, it symbolized the death of innocence itself. Fact 12. The bizarre age gap that made no sense. You ever binge-watch an old show and think, wait, didn't this kid used to be younger? Welcome to the Leave It to Beaver timeline, where math went to die. When the show started in 1957, Wally was 13, Beaver was 7, 6 years apart. Simple, logical. But by the final season in 1963, Beaver was finishing 8th grade and Wally was heading to college, only 4 years apart. Fans caught it. Magazines wrote about it. And the producers? They didn't deny it. They admitted they'd manipulated time on purpose. The truth is, they were terrified of losing Tony Dow. If Wally graduated and moved away, the heart of the show, that big brother-little brother bond, would be gone. So they quietly slowed down Wally's aging while letting Beaver catch up. It was subtle at first, a skipped birthday here, a forgotten grade there. But by the end, the Cleavers' household existed in its own bizarre time loop. In real life, Mathers and Dow were only 3 years apart anyway. So, in a strange way, the fake timeline actually made things more real. Still, it left fans puzzled for decades, wondering if Mayfield existed in some kind of sitcom Bermuda Triangle. It's still a mystery. Fact 13. When June Cleaver spoke jive. You think you know June Cleaver? Pearls, heels, polite smiles. But in 1980, Barbara Billingsley flipped the world on its head. She went from baking cookies to speaking jive, fluently. It happened in the cult comedy Airplane, and if you've seen it, you'll never forget it. A sweet old lady suddenly turns around on a chaotic flight and starts translating street slang for 2 panicking black passengers. "Shit's gonna hit the fan," she says in perfect rhythm, like she'd been hanging out in South Central her whole life. The audience lost it. The theater erupted, because it wasn't just a joke. It was June Cleaver doing the one thing nobody expected her to do. And that's exactly why the directors cast her. They wanted America's perfect mom to break the mold in one glorious punchline. But what most people don't know? Barbara didn't just show up and fake it. She trained for it. She met with dialect coaches, learned the cadence, and practiced until she nailed every word. When the film came out, it resurrected her career overnight. Barbara later said, "People remembered me as June Cleaver. Now they remember me as the Jive Lady, too." And that's the beauty of it. So after everything you've just heard, do you still believe Leave It to Beaver was the picture of innocence? Or was it the biggest lie television ever sold us? Tell us what you think in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe, because the next story will be even darker.